Hello everyone, and a special welcome to John Stamos, who I sincerely hope is watching this episode of Versus, because on today's program, it's a cavalcade of comedic craziness that will pit two Hollywood A-listers into a competition that will only allow one of them to have the coveted top bunk.
Oh, Jesus, my heart is beating so fast.
If you ain't first, you're last in the world of Versus, and stepbrothers Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly are picking up the shovels and going at it in the front yard once again.
No need for that. Come on now. Everybody keep your wigs on now.
In one corner, you have celebrated funnyman Will Ferrell. He got his start on Saturday Night Live, and since then has played everyone from an anchorman to a Nascar driver to one half of the greatest detective team in history.
Sherlock Holmes, charmed me.
In the other corner, it's beloved character actor John C. Reilly, who got his start on stages in the Midwest, and since has played everyone from a New York gangster to a NASCAR driver, to the other half of the greatest detective team in history.
Wonderful.
Yes, folks, Holmes and Watson are the best crime solvers of all time.
Hey.
Even if a certain movie about them isn't quite as memorable.
Oh, please. How dare you?
See? I work hard here. Every time y'all think, oh, Mark has it so easy, he just has to look pretty while laughing at Talladega Nights, just remember, I also had to watch Holmes and Watson.
Where did I go wrong?
Or at least research it for 15 seconds. I can't do that to myself.
It is glorious! I've seen it.
I'm not gonna watch the movie. What I can happily do is tell you how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer / audience score. Round 3, iconic characters. Round 4, range. And then we'll do a wild card round that could involve wrecked boats, wine mixers, or even samurai swords autographed by American Idol judges. I do love these episodes where we get to chew the fat about movies I don't have to rewatch because I already have them committed to memory. Step Brothers might be the funniest movie of this millennium, but these fellas aren't just comedic stars and animated film behemoths. They can do drama, even a little singing and dancing and fighting.
I've been called the songbird of my generation.
The easier question is, what can't Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly do?
We're streaking! We're going up through the quad to the gymnasium!
Well, they both can't win today's episode of Versus, but you can, because this show will be chock full of the best moments, funniest lines, and drum set friskiness of these two great careers thus far. Let's get it on.
The game is a-starting!
Round 1, box office. Sure, you've heard of Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. You've probably gone to see their movies, see them on posters, and caught more than a few of their flicks scrolling through your streaming service of choice or channel surfing. But they're more than just household names. These two fellas have starred in a ton of gigantic blockbusters over their storied careers.
Hey, if it isn't Star Prince.
Some together, most separate, and they both show up when we least expect them.
Damn right.
But we all knew we were in for hilarity with the Anchorman films, and we were pretty sure that was John C. Reilly voicing the titular character in Wreck-It Ralph.
Right. I'm sorry, you lost me there.
But both fellas have somewhat of a surprise or two at the top of their greatest box office successes list. Reilly's highest grossing flick to date is Guardians of the Galaxy, which hauled in $770 million around the galaxy.
What a bunch of a-holes.
He was in that about as much as Will Ferrell was in his chart topper, The Lego Movie, which did $468 million all told.
Diabolical.
As far as their starring roles, we stay in the world of animation for their premier dollar-counting turns. Ferrell's Megamind did over $300 million worth of business, and Reilly's two Ralph flicks have done over $1 billion around the globe. The rest of Reilly's top 10 buck grossers are primarily supporting roles in acclaimed films like Chicago, Gangs of New York, and The Aviator, while Ferrell rounds out his top 10 starring in comedic juggernauts like the Daddy's Home Duo, Elf, and Anchorman 2. The legend continues.
That is in no way a brag, Brian.
Now, if you assume that Will Ferrell has an impressive overall multiplex resume, you'd be right. His list of box office blockbusters makes his cinematic career comparable to the football pedigree of his beloved alma mater, the USC Trojans.
I smoked pot with Johnny Hopkins.
Good luck, Lincoln Riley. The new football coach there, no relation to John C., they spell their names differently. When you add it all up, Will Ferrell films have totaled $4.3 billion worth of worldwide cash register bells, making for an average of $107 million per flick. That's got to be more than enough to topple the character dude John C. Reilly in this round, right?
Just wait till you see what happens now.
Well, the funny thing about supporting roles, they're usually supporting even more famous A-listers, thus the movies themselves could be kind of popular.
Guilty as charged.
And Reilly's total film dollar amount outbeefs his counterpart by over $1 billion.
Well. Look who's back in the game.
His global earnings so far are at $5.6 billion, making for a per-movie average of $125 million. Holy crap, this guy knows how to pick a winner and deliver a knockout performance in the process.
I think I'm doing okay for a 15-year-old with a wife and a baby.
But it might not be enough to fell Will Ferrell in this round. Why? Well, $1 billion plus is a sizable difference, but we also have to weigh starring roles against you showed up for a few great scenes movies. Statistics. They're so much fun to manipulate.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Both gentlemen have cameoed in numerous films where you don't expect to see them. Hey, that's Will Ferrell in Austin Powers 2. Oh, look, it's John C. Reilly in Kong Skull Island. But more often than not, it's Will Ferrell in the lead of a film and John C. Reilly amongst the cast of a motion picture. Ferrell certainly loves the famous cast around him. Notable co-stars over the years have included people like Steve Carell,
I just burned my tongue.
Paul Rudd, Kevin Hart, Mark Wahlberg,
I'm a peacock! You gotta let me fly!
and Amy Poehler, to name a few. Oh, and John C. Reilly. But it's still a Will Ferrell movie that's being sold.
I'm kind of a big deal.
John C. Reilly has starred in many great films, to much acclaim, but the box office results can't compare to when it's a Ferrell vehicle.
It's true. I don't deserve nice things.
It's like the Showtime Lakers of the 1980s. James Worthy won a bunch of titles with them, and he earned all those rings. But do they win any of those series without Magic Johnson running the Lake Show?
I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
I dare say not. And yes, that's another Southern California sports reference I used because despite not having the gaudiest numbers today, Will Ferrell did the lion's share of his work as a headliner, so he gets the point in what will probably be a very controversial round.
Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
This probably means Dale won't let me play his drum set anymore, Willie. Too bad. Will Ferrell wins round 1 and goes up 1-0.
I just want you to know I hate you.
Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. Going into today's episode, most of you probably thought Will Ferrell was the favorite to win, and with good reason. But it's arguable that John C. Reilly outplayed him in round 1 despite the idiot host, and even though he didn't get the point, he proved he's in it to win it.
Oh, I'm gonna walk. Hard.
So a great place to start might be with critics and audiences. How'd they feel after contributing to that $5.6 billion total amount of multiplex receipts? I think they were pretty happy with their purchase. John C. Reilly has a gaggle of movies all above 90% on the Tomatometer. And you know what? Before I go any further, I just have to mention that both fellas have a low point of 10% for a film on the Tomatometer. And that's not a coincidence because they both star in the movie. The same one. It's Holmes and Watson.
Silence you! Say it again. Say it again. I dare you.
Okay, moving on. Reilly's doing great at the top. Boogie Nights tops his resume here with a 93%. Stan and Ollie earned him a ton of critical praise, some award nominations, and a 92% on the Tomatometer. And Chicago, for which he received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, currently sits tied with Cedar Rapids and The Aviator at 86%. Meanwhile, Will Ferrell has made a ton of crowd-pleasing comedies over the years, but were the critics laughing? Sometimes. The Lego Movie's at 96%, but as far as starring vehicles go, Elf is tops at 85%, The Other Guys is at 78%, and the Anchorman films average out at a fresh 71%.
I'm really, really good.
The problem is, he's also got some big swings that didn't draw any contact with the movie reviewing contingent.
You know how to cut to the core of me.
Like A Night at the Roxbury at 11%, The House at 20%, and Semi-Pro at 22%, which I do agree with, except that poker scene still fall down hilarious.
We're saying nutty things because they're not true.
John C. Reilly's Tomatometer history is also marred with the occasional misfire, but they never reach the treacherous depths of Will Ferrell's duds. The Perfect Storm is at 47%. Cirque du Freak, the Vampire's Assistant, that was a real movie and not a dream I had. Well, that's at 38%, as is Days of Thunder. What? That movie isn't fresh at 1,000%?
You gotta be kidding me.
Speaking of racing, Ferrell and Reilly have another NASCAR flick together that is happily fresh. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and his pal Carl Naughton is at 71%. All right, way to go, team.
Shake and bake.
And while Step Brothers tragically isn't fresh, it is my fervent belief that its rotten number of 55% is the single most important reason that the book and delightful Christmas gift, The Rotten Movies We Love, was greenlit in the first place. Look at the cover. Now we just need a sequel where I can give Days of Thunder its justice. He rubbed you, and rubbin's racing.
He didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you, he rubbed you. And rubbin's son is racing.
All right, enough fun. Now it's time for math. Will Ferrell movies fought hard but only average of 49% on the Tomatometer. Meanwhile, John C. Reilly, despite his vampire movies, maintains a fresh per-film average at a Bill and Ted approved 69%, dude. All right, look at us go now. Carl Naughton is poised to slingshot ahead of his BFF Ricky Bobby, but let's first check the audience score. It's a lot closer.
I don't care. Sure, why not?
Reilly's only flick in the 90s here is Guardians of the Galaxy at 92%, but he has a nice run of freshness in the 80s with movies like The Hours, Magnolia, and What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He was in that? Cool.
I guess you could say I've gone through a rather dramatic transformation.
Meanwhile, Will Ferrell has some classic staples like Old School representing well at 86% and a more dramatic turn with Stranger Than Fiction at 85%. But, as Led Zeppelin would say, the song remains the same. Ferrell gets closer to fresh, but can't quite get over the finish line with an audience score per film average of 54%. Reilly's batting average dips, but remains fresh with a 63%. Okay, so we got out of this round with just one quick Holmes and Watson reference. Well, that makes two. And even more to the point, we got us a tied ball game. John C. Reilly wins his first round of the day, and it's 1-1.
I got a belly full of white dog crap in me. And now you laid this on me?
Round 3, iconic characters. If you starred on SNL and are known as one of the greatest cast members in the history of that show that has included the likes of Eddie Murphy, Chris Farley, and Tina Fey, you probably know a thing or two about creating characters. That's been the journey of Will Ferrell, but John C. Reilly is literally known as a transcendent character actor. It all adds up to a doozy of a round that will break the current tie, and when it comes to breaking things, take a guy named Frank and just add beer.
No, I appreciate it, but I told my wife I wouldn't drink tonight.
Once it hits those lips, it's so good, and a human being becomes a tank, and hilarity ensues. Old School was the film that cemented Ferrell's transition from a funny sketch player into a movie star, and he was just warming up. The name Ron Burgundy might be even more famous than the title of his own movie, Anchorman, and with good reason.
Do you know who I am?
He's the perfect embodiment of a dopey 1970s news anchor
What did you say?
who may not be mean-spirited, but his abundant ignorance leads to moments of misogyny, the fracturing of social mores,
Boy, that escalated quickly.
and overall, chuckles aplenty.
I'm in a glass case of emotion.
Even in films where we didn't know Will Ferrell was going to show up, he still left us happy he did. Lord Business was a welcome addition to us former Lego geniuses in the Lego movies, and another Frank made the perfect cap to the Wedding Crashers saga.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
Did he ever get that meatloaf? We may never know.
What is she doing? I never know what she's doing.
John C. Reilly's made an art form out of showing up and making the most out of his screen time. His turn as Reed Rothschild in Boogie Nights showed glimpses of a career that would go on to walk the line, or better yet, walk hard, between comedy and drama.
Well, my mother liked it a whole lot.
Your mother was wrong.
His aloof husbandry in flicks like The Hours in Chicago makes for a nice contrast with the grounded ridiculousness of Hank in Kong Skull Island.
I'm gonna stab you by the end of the night.
Really?
Just kidding.
A less capable actor could have taken that role and ruined the framework of the movie, but with John C. Reilly, it made him one of the film's standouts.
It's a good group of boys. We're all gonna die together out here. You're a good group of boys to die with, I'll tell you that much. You should have come here.
You know, besides Kong. Dewey Cox and Happy Jack Mulroney had very interesting stories to tell, but some of Reilly's most notorious characters had been in films that starred him alongside his buddy, well, except for on this show, Will Ferrell.
Did we just become best friends?
Yup! Carl Naughton and Ricky Bobby make the perfect team until they don't.
Cal, do you realize the implications of your actions right now?
What's the implication mean?
That's the plot on screen, but watching the film, we almost need two idiots to bounce between so we get a momentary break from the other one. Or in the case of Step Brothers, we get two geniuses in virtually every scene knocking it out of the stadium. Can you imagine anyone else in the roles of Ferrell's Brennan and Reilly's Dale? Even if you could, who are they going to play off of that would make the magic that our two stars did?
You're gonna make me cry. What poem is that from? Is that James Joyce?
Witness their early fights, their best friends realization, their stage prowess at the Catalina wine mixer. It's their individual talents and combined chemistry that make this one of the most rewatchable elixirs in filmed comedy history.
Was that a fart?
But this round is all about those most iconic of characters. And if Dale and Brennan are tied, and Ricky and Carl are a close 1-2 combo, only one actor is still enjoyed by families every season of Giving. The pumpkin spice lattes turn into peppermint mochas, and Buddy the Elf shows up on millions of TVs to bring us all some Christmas cheer.
Looks like a Christmas tree.
Add him into the blender that also has Frank the Tank, Ron Burgundy, and Chaz Michael Michaels from Blades of Glory, and what do you end up with? A truly iconic character who Mugatu would describe as hot right now.
I'm a hot little potato right now.
John C. Reilly gives Will Ferrell all he can handle in this round, but in the end, it's still Ferrell who takes the point. It's back to a 1-point lead for Frank the Tank, and it's 2-1.
Are you messing with me right now?
Round 4, range. So yeah, a nice score for Team Ferrell, but having the most iconic characters doesn't necessarily mean you display the most range while playing them.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing.
This round is going to be another tough contest between two gents who've displayed a breadth of ability in a variety of roles over the decades. And as I mentioned before, John C. Reilly has already been nominated for an Oscar, but can Will Ferrell sneak up and steal this round and thus win the whole match? It's a definite maybe. The first time that I, your fearless host Mark, noticed that Will Ferrell had some dramatic chops was when he did a little family comedy called Kicking and Screaming. He plays a dad/soccer coach, and while the movie's certainly a comedy, it was very different than something like Old School or an Anchorman. This wasn't a silly character that the filmmakers didn't bother making three-dimensional. This felt like a real person. Plus, legendary Chicago Bears coach Mike Ditka has a solid role in the film.
You're supposed to back me up and go get me juice boxes when I tell you. Now go get me a juice box.
In some ways, you could make the same argument for Elf. While Buddy can be just as ridiculous as Frank the Tank in some ways, he has a heart that shines through even in the midst of all his lunacy. Comedy isn't just a section at Blockbuster, or it wasn't just a section at Blockbuster. You see, children, we have to leave the house back in the day to go rent a movie. I'll tell you about it later. The point is, there's lots of subgenres within comedy, and Will Ferrell has the range to master them all.
Wow, I actually appreciate that.
For every goofy role like a Lars Ulrich song or a Jackie Moon, he can also play more grounded and still get laughs with turns like Harold Crick in Stranger Than Fiction, or even with his recent run as Marty Markowitz in The Shrink Next Door. But while Will Ferrell checks all the comedic boxes one could hope for, John C. Reilly films can be found in literally every section at Hollywood Video. Come on, admit it, we all cheated on Blockbuster occasionally with the Hollywood folk down the street.
What is wrong with you?
He can do comedy for sure, just check out Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, but he also wouldn't be out of place in something like Guardians of the Galaxy or The Good Girl. And his comedic chops and earnest likability allow him to mix genres into one role, like with The Promotion, The Lobster, or even the Wreck-It Ralph films. But for a full examination of John C. Reilly's range, just go back to 1 year, 2002, where he accomplished the nearly impossible. Dude was in 3 of the 5 Best Picture nominees at the Academy Awards. Gangs of New York, The Hours in Chicago were all up for the top honor, and as I already mentioned, he was nominated for Chi-Town. That was the ultimate winner in the Best Picture category that evening, and its Super Bowl shuffled its way home with 6 wins.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
If you really want versatility in the realm of cinema, Will Ferrell might be a surprising but accurate choice. However, John C. Reilly has proven himself to be a master of so many different types of roles, the information superhighway has coined the John C. Reilly Award. It's unofficially given to a performer who appears in the most Best Picture nominees in any 1 year. But my boy John did it when there were only 5 nomination slots.
It really is a lot of fun.
Now it's 10 movies? And you and I were probably in at least 2 of those, right?
We literally have never done any of those things.
John C. Reilly's also going to win this award, which is really just a point on my show Versus. But hey, that's a resume builder. Now we got us a tied match once again at 2 points apiece, and it all comes down to the next round.
Checkmate.
It's time for the wild card round, Prestige Worldwide. Okay, so here's how I arrived at this decision. I could have gone with the best highlights over the years, or which movie from each competitor's resume is the best, and then pitted those flicks against each other. But in my humble opinion, and I haven't had a carb since 2004, I think Step Brothers is the funniest flick from Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, so why not make that the deciding round? It's all about that movie. We're going to cherish it, honor it, and then maybe see if one of the two Step Bros stands out just a little bit more from the other.
This is a house of learned doctors.
Plus, it gives me a fresh excuse to go back and watch Step Brothers.
We're here to up.
No one in that entire cast is anything less than exceptional. Mary Steenburgen as Brennan, that's Will Ferrell's character's mom.
Why are you guys so sweaty?
Richard Jenkins as Dale, that's John C. Reilly's role's dad. Adam Scott as Brennan's brother. Kathryn Hahn as that wife. Andrea Savage as Brennan's therapist.
I love you.
Obviously, you don't know me.
I love you so much.
And of course, Horatio Sands as the lead singer of Uptown Girl, California's preeminent 1980s Billy Joel cover band.
We strictly do 80s Joel music, sir.
In fact, one of my favorite lines isn't from Ferrell or Reilly. It's when a sullen Richard Jenkins utters at Christmas,
I'm gonna go down to the Cheesecake Factory, have a drink.
I really love this movie. Dale is an emotional softie with a tough exterior, and some of his highlights include wearing a tux with tails to a job interview, co-engineering bunk bed carpentry.
That looks like what you would buy from a store.
And becoming the head of a highly recommended catering company. He starts out as a shy dimwit, but comes into his own and eventually realizes that he doesn't need a Chewbacca mask to pay the bills. Brennan is too scared to show off his real talent to the world, so instead of singing, he resorts to hopping on Dale's drum set without Dale's permission, hiring Dale's company to work at the Catalina wine mixer, and eventually figuring out how to buy basic household supplies at a store all by himself. Neither of the fellas have much luck with the ladies. Brennan becomes obsessed with the one female in his life that's not his mom. That would be his therapist.
She's a rascal.
He harbors some fantasies about what their lives could be together, but she's quick to bring him right back down to earth throughout most of the film.
In no way, shape, or form do I feel any feelings of intimacy towards you in any way whatsoever.
Meanwhile, with Dale, it's not him who has the fantasies, it's Kathryn Hahn's Alice, who so desperately wants to leave her husband for Dale. It's at this point when I need to remind everyone that Kathryn Hahn is a gem and one of the funniest people who has ever lived.
Oh my God. You're incredible.
And that might be the storyline that gets me leaning slightly towards Team Dale. When he punches Derek and Derek falls out of the treehouse, it's the galvanizing force that allows the two stepbrothers to team up and have all of these many misadventures.
That was cool.
And it's also the inciting action that starts Alice's heated obsession with human/occasional Manitar Dale. Brennan eventually feels so comfortable with his new comrade that he sings for him.
I think you took on the shape of a unicorn.
Yet it's Dale that comes up with the idea for Prestige Worldwide.
Why?
An all-encompassing entertainment company.
Investors? Possibly you!
And it's Dale's dad's boat that the boys commandeer to film their mission statement music video.
What's done is done, Dad. Are you guys gonna invest or not?
That's it!
At the effing Catalina wine mixer, all of the stories in Step Brothers come to a soaring climax. Those heights are achieved largely thanks to the voice of a generation, Brennan, after Uptown Girl's set gets ruined by a crowd desperate to hear some 1970s tunes.
We only sing 80s, Joel!
But would we have heard that true unicorn-like power of that generational voice if Dale hadn't first hopped on the drums and saved the entire party? It's as tough of a call as I've had to make over the many decades I've hosted Versus, but I think I'm giving the edge in this round to John C. Reilly's transcendental performance as Dale, slightly over Will Ferrell's incomparable Brennan.
You crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that?
Now, I might wake up tomorrow and feel differently about this decision, but one thing will remain a constant. Pound for pound, line for line, Kathryn Hahn might be the one that makes me laugh the hardest in this movie.
Come on, let's try something illegal.
But of our competitors today, Dale gets a nod over Brennan, and John C. Reilly wins the round and thus the match.
You see, your actions have consequences!
So now that I've made my ruling and it was against comedy legend Will Ferrell, I feel compelled to point out that he's in one of the funniest sketches in SNL history. No, not the cowbell one. Head to YouTube and search when Will Ferrell plays Satan after guest host Garth Brooks offers to sell his soul to write a hit song. It's been lost amongst the era's greatest sketches, but should never be forgotten. I'll also throw in the fact that Will Ferrell is an uber producer who makes a lot more than just in the realm of comedy. Now, I'll put that against the fact that John C. Reilly is Steve Brule, and those make the best gifts this side of a Muppet sipping tea. As for today's show and the, as it always seems to be here, controversial outcome, remember, it's just my opinion. Now it's your turn. Go look at the entire filmography of these two hilarious hunks and hit me up on social media with your favorite. I'm at Mark Ellis Live, and remember to check out the rotten movies we love wherever books are sold. Justice for Step Brothers. Thanks for watching this episode of Versus. I'm Mark Ellis, and don't you ever touch my drum set.